Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another short story reading as part of the Voices Within series that they are doing in preparation for the launch of The War Within in World of Warcraft. I've already done videos reading the previous two stories, one focused on Illyria, the other focused on Anduin. This one apparently seems to be focused on Gazlowe and the Goblins, which is interesting, because we haven't really checked in on them since BFA. Like, basically ever since the end of BFA, when Gallywix took off, and Gazlowe basically took over, we haven't really checked in on them. I guess this is going to be an opportunity to do that. As before, I'm going to go ahead and put on the sounds of the Taverns of Azeroth in the background, as if you're all gathered around reading a story. Before we do this, though, I do have to acknowledge something, especially in case it affects my ability to read this. I am actually doing this with a bit of a heavy heart. Earlier today, we had to put our beloved little dog, Rexy, of 9 years, to sleep. And, yeah, let's just say that I saw this come out and I was wanting to do a video on this. Probably not the best of times to do this, but at the same time, I'm kind of wanting to do some things to take my mind a bit off of it, even though I'm still kind of in my grieving process. But, so if that happens or translates during my reading here, I apologize. I'm not doing this necessarily to gain, I don't know, sympathy or whatever, just letting you know, in case it affects my normal, usual ability to read these. So, anyways, just thought I'd let you guys know about that. Anyways, let me start the Taverns of Azeroth here. Not too loud. So, let me turn it down a little bit more. Just kind of lightly in the background there. The Goblin Way by Andrew Robinson. Monty Gazlowe sighed, looking out over a vast mining operation from his spot on a platform above the mine's South District floor. This was his fifth fact-finding tour of the week, and it seemed like he had been going non-stop for months. Taking stock of less than desirable working conditions among the goblins, this one was easily amongst the worst. Though Marin Noggenfogger, Gazlowe's host and guide, acted like everything was above board. Quick aside for a couple of things. One, I'm going to try my best to replicate Gazlowe's voice, which I got a good, healthy amount of back in Heroes of the Storm. Obviously, he has had his voice in World of Warcraft. Gazlowe has been around since Warcraft 3. But you didn't really get his, main voice until, I think, Warlords of Draenor, Possibly? I'm not entirely sure about that. I just know that, of course, we all remember, as Horde, going into the place where our garrison would be, and there's Gazlowe to help make it, So I'd be trying to replicate Gazlowe's voice as best I could. Also, for just a little reminder, in case you don't know who Marin Noggenfogger is, back in Vanilla, he was a goblin that you would get a quest to get some ingredients to make this potion that could turn you into things like skeletons and other random things. It was a very cool, popular quest that a lot of players did, because it was cool to be able to, especially back in the days of Vanilla, to get these potions that you would drink, and, it was kind of like, oh, cool, look at this. Here's the thing. A lot of players did that quest line. And the devs ran with that at the idea that he had sold so many of these potions because of all the players in the game that were doing it, that by the time Cataclysm came around, he was this insanely rich, baron, rivaling the wealth of, say, Gallywix. And then by the time Legion came around, he was actually part of the Rogue Order Hall, but he was the big financial guy. You would walk into his area, his vault in the Rogue Order Hall, the Hall of Shadows, and there he would be just laying on top of a pile of gold, where he was basically clearly backing up the Uncrowned financially, providing all the financials for the rogues in Legion, which I thought was a really cool idea. So It doesn't surprise me that Gazlo would get in contact and perhaps work alongside Noggenfogger, since he would, of course, have the financials to help really keep things going with the cartel. You know, all the different cartels and such that the goblins have. Noggenfogger waved for Gazlo's attention, looking out of place in a miraculously unsullied all-white suit that practically gleamed amid the smoky air and rancid dripping space. It was clear that he had recently taken over this operation. "Over here!" he called. Then he turned to one of his bodyguards for help. "Is the two-shift working the, long wall shearer?" Gazlo offered. Noggenfogger grinned. "Yeah, what you said. The rock chomper, the 3000. Beautiful piece of machinery, eh?" He beamed more broadly as he gestured down into the enormous mine at a steam-powered behemoth. Its fearsome metal teeth ground relentlessly into the bedrock to get at the vein of iron ore that was the lifeblood of this operation. "You gotta lean over the railing a little to really get a good look. Unless you want to go down and see it up close," Noggenfogger added, beckoning Gazlo to the platform. Gazlo stepped closer to the railing, waving off his orc bodyguard, Vakan. Unlike some goblins, including Noggenfogger it seemed, Gazlo had no fear of heights. As the shearer brought ground ore to the surface, Gazlo leaned against the railing to watch workers, mostly goblins and some orcs, operate walking mechs with steam shovels, which loaded ore into minecarts, which would take it to a processing plant. A number of workers had bandages wrapped up around their limbs, likely because of the discarded machine parts cluttering the footpaths, and a few let out fits of wet, throaty coughs while clamping soiled rags over their mouths. Plus, they're goblins. I mean, explosions happen everywhere. Noggenfogger gave Gazlo a fidgety smile, nodding as if to say, "Nice, eh?" Gazlo peered back down, and then a section of the railing detached from its mooring with a screech and swung out, leaving nothing but space between Gazlo and a deadly fall. He teetered for a moment before regaining his balance, with the help of Vakan, who shot out a beefy hand to grab his collar and haul him swiftly backward. Gazlo whipped a glare at Noggenfogger, his pointed ears rigged. Had this been Noggenfogger's aim, to stage some sort of accident? As newly installed head of the Bilgewater cartel, and de facto representative of his race to the Horde, Gazlo was aware that he had enemies. But he honestly hadn't thought an attempt on his life would come this soon, let alone be this ham-fisted. Gazlo narrowed his eyes. "Look, Noggenfogger, I don't know what you think you know about me, but I don't die that easy." At that, Vakan planted himself between Gazlo and the mine boss, scowling. Whoa, Trade Prince! Look, it's me, Noggenfogger. I would never do that. In fact, I'm just as shocked as you are." For what it was worth, Noggenfogger had gone a deadly shade of pale green, though whether this was from the realization his murderous scheme had failed, or because he was truly taken by surprise, Gazlo couldn't say. "Believe me," he said, surveying the platform, "that was an accident. This calamitous breach of construction will not go unpunished, let me assure you." Vakan took a step toward Noggenfogger, cracking his knuckles with a deep grumble. But Gazlo put a hand to stay the orc. He had no reason to trust Noggenfogger. In fact, at this point, he knew that he couldn't. But he did see that the head of the Steam Weedle cartel was at least as unnerved as he was. Before the tour, Noggenfogger had made it quite clear that he hadn't even wanted Gazlo down there. While flipping through... Excuse me. Kind of lost... I got distracted. Let's see. Oh gosh, where was I? Sorry, I got a text. It just kind of distracted me. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Before the tour, Noggenfogger made it quite clear that he hadn't even wanted Gazlo down there. While flipping through the financial statements, he had offered Gazlo more than one drink, and knowing Noggenfogger's reputation for poisons and elixirs, Gazlo had repeatedly demurred. He'd only begrudgingly arranged for a brief overview of the operations at Gazlo's insistence, rambling on about how his time here was limited for the day. What with having a whole other city to run. Ultimately, Gazlo had used the power of the Horde to strong-arm Noggenfogger into agreeing. With a practiced eye, Gaslow ascertained that the platform had been assembled hastily. Within the last few days, he ground his teeth together. "This is the problem I keep encountering," he murmured to Vakan. "Our people are smart, but erratic. Genius ideas, inconsistent execution. We solve difficult logistical problems, but all too often it's the fact that we don't pay attention to the details, to quality control, that undoes our best efforts." The orc crossed his arms and grunted in agreement. In the wake of all that happened since the disappearance of the former leader of the Bilgewater cartel, Jaster Gallywix, Gaslow, had taken pains to inspire the people in his cartel to aim higher and to convince others to do the same. He promoted those who paid attention to detail, who tightened bolts as an extra turn and measured twice before they cut. He paid his crew better than anybody else, and the results spoke for themselves. He'd always been known for getting things done, and he never disappointed. He looked over at Noggenfogger. "For now, I'm willing to believe you didn't just try to off me. For now, so lead on." Noggenfogger gave a relieved smile. "Smelting and sluicing's up ahead. Next juncture." They walked on towards an opening in the distance, stepping over oily puddles. "This kind of thing," Gaslow said, waving one hand to indicate the entirety of the mine. "A lot of the Horde doesn't respect goblins." Noggenfogger blinked his beady gray eyes. Gaslow ducked under a sagging support beam. "Some folks think we're unreliable." He pointed back towards the broken railing. "Greedy." He fixed Noggenfogger with a pointed look. "Disrespectful. That assessment strike you as accurate?" Truth be told, those prejudices deeply bothered Gaslow. But before he could tackle the Horde's opinions, he would first have to change how goblins perceived one another. This mine was a microcosm of a larger problem. Rushed jobs, shoddy craftsmanship, poor upkeep, overworking people, and management smiling broadly while siphoning off a fat paycheck. Noggenfogger barked a bitter laugh. "Like their hands are so clean," he snorted. "Anyways, we hold our own just fine. Most goblins aren't even part of the Horde, or the Alliance for that matter. They value their independence too much." As they approached end of a vast chamber, Noggenfogger began yammering on about how smoothly things were going, praising his own management. "And I tell you, the engineers are always doing engineering stuff. We got explosives guys working explosives. We got drillers, delvers, diggers, and drivers. I started shifts going day and night, and nobody leaves till their quota's been filled." He laughed. "Not if they want to get paid." Gaslow nodded, scoping out the miners. The overseers worked with enthusiasm, shouting threats into bullhorns. But the pace, Gaslow could see, showed the telltale signs of overwork. Here and there, diggers stopped to lean on their shovels. Gaslow, one of the best engineers of his generation, could see indications that the steam-powered ore shearing machine wasn't operating properly. He could hear a piston misfiring. He could see and smell the acrid smoke that told him the engine was burning more oil than it should. An audible rattle suggested that the rock chomper would need repairs sooner rather than later, and he could see the same issues throughout the cavern. The place was full of death machines and more death machines. Gaslow picked his way down a slope crumbling with debris and approached a miner transporting ground ore into a cart with a wheelbarrow. Not far from a rock-powered drill sitting idle, dripping some kind of noxious-smelling goop into the dirt. The worker spilled his haul and swore. "Hey, pal! Over here! How's it going?" Oh, excuse me. The miner wiped a blackened hand across his sweaty brow and rested on his shovel. "Well, to be honest," he started, but stopped when he saw Noggenfogger peering down at him. Noggenfogger wore a carefully neutral face. "Go ahead." "Split spark," the miner grimaced. "Sir," he added hurriedly. "Split spark, that's right. Tell Mr. Gaslow how it's going down here." The worker glanced at his overseer, whose stony face was an unmistakable warning. It's aces," As great as Mr. Noggenfogger. Couldn't be happier. We're, moving ore like nobody's business. So, he motioned to the wheelbarrow. I gotta get back to work. Those quotas ain't gonna fill themselves. He busied himself with collecting his spilled haul. Gazlo motioned toward a barrel of water. You sure you don't want to rest? A drink? Splitspark wiped his perspiring brow, unwittingly showing angry blisters on his hands. Oh, no, I had some water yesterday. Thanks. Noggenfogger smiled and beckoned Gazlo away. You see, hunky-dory. Happy miners, happy engineers, happy drivers, happy drill bits, happy customers. And my operation is clean. Gazlo glanced at Vacan, who had just blown a loud snort of offense and disgust. Look, Foggy, Noggenfogger. Yeah, whatever. Whatever? Now that's a goblin bear being disrespectful. You seem to be forgetting I'm leader of the Steam Weedle Cartel, Gazzy. Gazlo cackled. And you seem to be forgetting that I'm trade prince of the Bilgewater Cartel. So lying to my face, is that really how you want to start this relationship? Noggenfogger sputtered and his bodyguard started to unsheath truncheons, but Noggenfogger waved them to halt. Well, that's about as much time as I got for today, he said. Gazlo climbed back up the hill of debris to join him. What say we keep going? Noggenfogger bristled for a moment. With respect, he growled. I didn't think you'd be here for so long, and I got meetings and whatnot to tend to in Gadgetzan, so we're doing this, Gazlo assured him with a smile, gesturing for him to continue leading the way. With respect. I'm sure you wouldn't let Gadgetzan get this bad, would ya? Noggenfogger mumbled and guided Gazlo further into the mine, their bodyguards trailing them from a distance. I know what you're trying to sell me here, and I'm not buying it, Gazlo said, climbing over a collapsed pipe. What I'm seeing is your people are overworked and underpaid. Your engineers and tinkers ain't motivated. Your machines ain't getting maintained properly. And that's dangerous. Noggenfogger started to object. Gazlo raised a finger and then pointed back to where they had left the shearing machine. I can hear the bolts rattling on that rock chomper. So the most generous interpretation here is that this guy's great with elixirs and potions and whatnot, and he's even used to mayoring. But maybe he doesn't know anything about mining, and a little bit too much about the bottom line. Noggenfogger snorted. The bottom line is king. Nobody cares about maintenance, they care about results. Gazlo grabbed the hand of the nearest worker, revealing the same angry bandage wounds he had seen on Splitspark. Skipping maintenance impacts results, with your people as much as your machines. How can you expect your engineers to grip a wrench with hands like these? Sure, we got a lot of workers calling out sick, but that's any job, Noggenfogger countered. Gazlo sniffed deeply and felt the rank rasp of oily fumes in his nostrils. And the air? You know it ain't good. You're using cheap fuel and rancid oil. You gotta burn cleaner, get the ventilation systems up. And to try and pass this off as a clean outfit? Come on, Niffler. Noggenfogger! Marin Noggenfogger! Noggenfogger glared. And it ain't a lie, I'm clean. Most of that stuff doesn't rise to my level of oversight, so I got plausible deniability of all that mess. Gazlo glared back. That ain't what running a clean operation means. Clean means you're not polluting. Noggenfogger's eyes went wide, and he hastened to smooth down his pure white suit, which had become increasingly wrinkled and stained with greasy droplets. Oh, well then, no. The work gives off a natural, vapor. What am I supposed to do about that? That's what you call a misunderstanding of frankly confusing terminology. Gazlo gestured for Noggenfogger to cross a creaky catwalk first. Noggenfogger hesitated far too long before obliging. Then Gazlo followed. Look, this ain't just about your bottom line. There's more work here we could all have from the Horde, and maybe more folks too, if we can run a tighter outfit together. But how am I supposed to talk to a shaman or a druid with your mind belching out this smog? How can we convince clients that you're reliable when you got workers out every day with injuries like that? Look, you come in here. You got no idea what I've had to do to get where I am. You think it's easy scheming your way into a mayorship? Or the top slot in Steam Weedle? The palms I greased? The elixirs I concocted? Gazlo laughed. That don't make you special. I rose through the Steam Weedle system just like you. Besides, your rivals and enemies seem to mysteriously go toes up a lot more than the average. Allegedly, Noggenfogger corrected. Gazlo cocked an eyebrow. Seriously? Okay, sure, I may be the best alchemist there is, Noggenfogger backpedaled, and I got my famous elixir and the occasional... Poise? Yeah, whatever that word is. I mean, other stuff. But that ain't the point. I had to compete with the likes of Gallywix and the Venture Company, and now I'm the boss here. So I should get to call the shots. Me and a lot of other goblins believe that if I don't take things this far, I'll be replaced. Or worse. Besides, I don't see anyone that if I don't take things this far, I'll... Oh, wait. My bad. I see one making Gallywix clean up his act. No one stops the Venture Company. But I'm the bad guy? Gazlo paused. I know you know what happened to Gallywix. I know he had to split, but he's got nothing to do with Steamweedle or this mine. You had occasion to deal with him, running Gadgetzan. Yeah, he was a bastard. I hated his guts, but I respected how he did business. Did you? Did you respect how he took advantage of his own people and put them to work in his mines? After taking everything they owned in exchange for transport away from Mount Kajaro when it was erupting during the Cataclysm? I mean, yeah, harsh, but that's the dedication to profit. That's what's going on here? Allow me to explain something. Having injured and sick workers using poorly maintained machinery eats into the bottom line. It's a short-term gain for long-term loss. Fixing your tools now, having happy, healthy employees now, is an investment. And a damn good one. This ain't how we've always done it. Gallywix wasn't a businessman. He was a con man and a criminal. Profit above everything else. Ain't good business. A lot of people wanted him gone. His own mother tried to assassinate him. Twice. He solved a lot of problems, but he made worse ones out of them. He got stuff done, but he wrecked more. I asked him once if it bothered him taking advantage of those refugees and working his own people to the bone. You know what he said? It's the Goblin Way. Supply and demand. Deal with it. Noggenfogger shrugged. That is the Goblin Way, right? No, it ain't. That was Gallywix's way. The Goblin Way is invention, innovation, partnership. Those things cost a lot. But they earn a lot for every goblin, not just a few, Gazlo said. I swear, you're missing my point on purpose. Supply and demand is one way to do things, but we can't only be thinking of just ourselves no more. The world is changing. There's nothing wrong with how I run this mine, Noggenfogger protested. Maybe it's no day at the spa, but production is up ever since I took over. Noggenfogger's attitude put Gazlo in mind of another goblin leader that he had hoped to forget, because his legacy was as bad in its own way as Gallywix's. Notorious all over Azeroth for their lumber and mining operations, which was to say, clear-cutting forests and strip mining areas, leaving barren scars across the land. And the way they operated their oil rigs was reckless at best, not to mention their arms dealing with groups that neither Horde nor Alliance found palatable. Heard of Mogul Razdunk? Gazlo inquired. Of course, former head of the Venture Company. We modeled this operation on theirs. Of course you did, Gazlo thought. Razdunk was aggressive, he said, but again, he didn't consider the repercussions of his actions, and it caught up to him. He oversaw the Venture Company through expansion in Mulgore, the Stone Talon Mountains, Kultiris, Grizzly Hills, Sholazar Basin, and Stranglethorn. But here's the thing. Everywhere they go for a quick buck, it pisses people off, and folks find a way to fight back, to make it harder and harder for them to do business. Pretty soon, everyone there's attacking them, but they just keep doing it. Noggenfogger looked less certain. That's the market, though, right? Business is business. Gazlo shook his head. Business is personal. When you wreck someone's home, that's personal, and it's bad for business. They arrived at a sluice town, a collection of tin shacks that stood hard up against the sluices that ran already dirty water over the crushed rock to create a slurry that would separate ore from waste. The ore was run to a massive smelting plant, which melted the rock and purified the ore into metal. This was even worse than Gazzo had expected. The dim lights flickered badly. The air was oily and stale. His eyes burned a little. Gazzo wheezed. You gotta get this place ventilated. The air. You gotta know this ain't sustainable. Sustainable? Noggenfogger scoffed. What are you now, a shaman? Gazzo shrugged. I've been called worse by better people, but I'm glad you mentioned it. Part of why I'm here is that the elements themselves have taken offense to stuff like what's happening here. And what the venture company does. I'm here Nazaroth is out of patience with us, and you, Mayor Gadgetan, leader of the Steam Weedle Cartel, and yeah, head of this operation, you gotta take your share of responsibility for that. Need I remind you, you can make and play a goblin shaman in WoW? Just putting that out there. Noggenfogger harumphed, harumph. Gazzo had seen enough. He gestured and Noggenfogger led them back into the shearing cavern, where Gazzo called out to a goblin working the machine. Hey, pal! How many times has that machine broke down? This week? 5? He replied plainly. And how much production has that cost you? The goblin resignedly turned his palm skyward. Gazzo turned his ire back onto Noggenfogger. And exactly how many sick days have your employees taken because of injury, poor conditions? Noggenfogger hesitated. Well, you know about as much about your operation as Razdunk did. He thought he was going to get rich and become a trade prince, when what he got was blown up by Gallywix. Don't worship these jokers, Gazzo said. Don't model yourself on them. There are better models. Look at the Horde Council. Noggenfogger scowled. How'd you get on the Horde Council anyway, huh? What makes you so special? Nothing. The difference between me and the other trade princes is that I don't think the world is just here to feed me. I learned a while back, you do better when you don't make it all about you. Noggenfogger looked put upon. So what? You arrive, tell me what I'm doing wrong, and then throw me to the wolves to fix it? I get the short end and you go enjoy tea and crumpets? Nah, I don't much like crumpets. Look, I know we got a steep uphill climb, but if we don't change our business, and I mean for all of us, all the goblins, not the mine, we're gonna get left behind. We need to start lifting each other up instead of seeing each other as competition. And I'm hoping that you and I can start together. Noggenfogger took a step back. His beady eyes went wide, and then he scowled again, suspicion written all over his sallow face. Now it makes sense. It's not enough you get the Bilgewater under your thumb and probably steal some of Steamweedle, and your pals in the Horde to back your play. You want my little mining operation all for yourself. I ask for help and you move and take over. You're as bad as Gallywix. In fact, you're worse. At least he was honest about how downright foul he was. Gazzo sighed, pinching the bridge of his long nose. I don't want the mine. I didn't want to be head of the Bilgewater Cartel. I didn't want to have to represent all the goblins to the Horde. I mean, between you and me, that's a lot of pressure. He gazed at the wearing shearer wistfully. I could just be watching speed barge races, he mused. Then why'd you take it? There are plenty of goblins who'd kill your whole family for either of those. I'm probably one of them. Gazzo looked sharply at Noggenfogger, but the mine leader didn't care. And you got 'em both, Noggenfogger concluded. Some smart guy once said, if somebody really wants to be the boss of everything, under no circumstances should they be allowed to have the job. He stared fixedly at Noggenfogger. Noggenfogger looked abashed, because they're only in it for themselves. Gazzo smiled. He can be bought. Noggenfogger snorted. You can't tell me you don't enjoy all that power. Oh, make no mistake, being powerful is better than being powerless. If I wanted to be bigger than Gallywix, I could have that. I'm honestly not interested. But like I said, it's more about the responsibility. The other reason is you want something done, you ask a busy person. What's that supposed to mean? The council chose me because they know I get things done. Plus, Gasso added, they know I'm a goblin of my word, and loyal to the Horde. Big deal, I've got loyal friends in the Horde. We both know that ain't true. Even if I was selling to both sides for a while, and there's plenty of goblins who just think gold is gold. Noggenfogger smirked. Well, you can't spend honor, can you? I mean, unless you're a PvP player. Gazlo turned away. Noggenfogger furrowed his brow. Look, what you're saying is great, but how I run things here, it's just how it's done. As if on cue, the sound of mechanical grinding filled the air, followed by an explosion and plenty of shouting. So a typical day for goblins. The huge shearing machine's engine was venting steam and workers carried injured operators to safety. Noggenfogger swore, deliberately avoiding Gasso's gaze. This is gonna hold up production! Hey! He screamed at the workers. Back to work! And somebody fix that! Tinkers and engineers gathered around the machine, which continued to smoke. Head machinist out injured! One worker shouted. Two other workers lifted blunted and broken tools, exchanging looks of defeat. Noggenfogger looked on, helpless. Whatever else you might be, Noggy, Gazlo urged. You ain't dense. I think you maybe could turn this place around, and I can help you. But you gotta be willing to play nice, and not just with me. Noggenfogger looked unmoored. Our whole system is built on competition, not cooperation. It's how we solve problems. Survival of the fittest, the cleverest, the most ruthless, the best deal makers. It's how we innovate. Why are you trying to fix that what ain't broken? Oh, it's broken. And I'm gonna show you why. This ain't the Goblin Way. They headed closer to the blast radius. The bodyguards joined them. As they approached the drilling site, the workers saw them coming and gave way to clear a path. Gazlo could hear murmurs, and knew that the workers were confused as that he was there. Heck, they were confused that Noggenfogger was in attendance, if not there to threaten them. Gazlo approached several engineers gathered around the open hood of an engine, and Noggenfogger followed. All right, what's going on? An older goblin in grease-stained overalls glared. Don't get your pantaloons in a He stopped when he realized to whom he was talking. Oh, Mr. Noggenfogger. Sorry. Look. This beast is long in the tooth. We've been washing out filters instead of replacing them. It's gunked up. The vibrations take a toll. I mean, we've been tightening bolts left and right, but eventually the threads get stripped, and they just won't hold. The gaskets are kind of shot, and the differential keeps slipping. This machine alone's gonna take a fortune to fix. I can't afford to have this offline for long, Noggenfogger told Gazlo. My clients expect shipments on the regular. This'll put me behind. If you let me take some of that heat, will you put the work in here? Gazlo asked. Noggenfogger looked grim, but there were no better options before him. I'll give it a shot. Gazlo took a step towards the machine. Tinker, right? What's your name? Ollie Spracknozzle. You're Mr. Gazlo. Call me Monty. Yeah, Spracknozzle. You know Skagit? He used to be head of the Tinkers Union here. He's one of my crew. Think he's mentioned you more than once in the positive, Ollie. Spracknozzle cracked a grin. He's good people. And then he looked hesitant. Look, excuse my asking, but, what are you doing here? We, Gazlo gestured to himself and Noggenfogger, are here to help. Ollie screwed up his face. No offense, but this is a mechanics thing, not a, He paused, clearly seeking a word that wouldn't offend. Big shot thing. Bosses don't help. They boss. Gazlo grinned. Let's see if we can change that particular perception. Noggenfogger was at least savvy enough to grimace non-committingly, so as not to actively antagonize the crowd. His bodyguards and Myers were both on edge. Still, Gazlo continued. As it turns out, Ollie, I happen to be a fair engineer myself. Mind showing us the problem? The tinker hesitated, clearly not used to deference from bosses, then shrugged, motioning one hand towards the engine. At that, Gazlo removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He gestured to Sprack Nozzle's tool belt. I didn't bring my own. Ollie, do you mind? What are you doing? Noggenfogger hissed, pulling Gazlo aside. Gazlo stooped beside the broken machine. What's it look like? Fixing this thing. You're gonna make me look bad. Well, hell, Noggenfogger, you say you're a good leader and a hustler, so hustle. Get your people in here to help. Gazlo paused, an idea taking shape. In fact, yeah, one of them elixirs of yours. It literally makes people tiny, among other things. Break out whatever stash you got, give it to your tinkers and engineers, and actually get them in there to help me fix it. Noggenfogger gaped. Sorry, give it to them? For free? He hissed under his breath. The ingredients alone. Big picture. Gazlo glared at the mine leader, who gritted his teeth, wrestling with the idea. Fine! Noggenfogger stomped off. In the next half hour, Noggenfogger, somewhat reluctantly, returned with a case of his special elixir, and gave it to a platoon of somewhat reluctant machinists, engineers, and tinkers, who had volunteered to help Gazlo fix the rock chomper. They got to work. Gazlo was in his element now, under the hood solving a mechanical issue, oblivious to the growing crowd of workers trying to figure out what was going on. Noggenfogger looked on, tapping his foot, glancing around. He moved alongside Ollie. Sprack Nozzle, the workers who got hurt. How many? 4, Mr. Noggenfogger. Tell them, Noggenfogger winced, that with no admission of culpability, mind you, I'm gonna take care of them. Like, medically, I mean. I've got something to make 'em right. Ollie looked at Noggenfogger as if he had spoken gibberish. He opened his mouth to respond, but had trouble finding words. That'll be a load off of their minds. Noggenfogger nodded. A gap-toothed grin spread across Ollie's face. I'll let him know, sir. Noggenfogger took a deep breath and then addressed the crowd. This may take a while, but don't worry. We'll get this fixed as soon as possible. So you all, take the rest of the day off. The workers didn't quite know how to respond. With pay, he said with a sigh, and the crowd cheered it, even as most of them stayed. There was entertainment value to what was happening now. Gazlo, working on the engine, smiled in the darkness of the machine's underbelly. His plan had worked. Hey, Noggenfogger, he called out. You want to see how to fix one of these things? Noggenfogger stooped beside him. Yeah, he said, peering into the open engine compartment where the tinkers were gathered around Gazlo. I'd appreciate it. Gazlo grinned. Maybe this was going to work even better than he had thought. After his team added a greasy solution of one thing, replaced a few stripped gears and cracked bolts and gaskets, as well as doing some preventive maintenance, Gazlo turned the final screw, stood, and wiped his hands on his pants. That should do it, he nodded, and a machinist pulled a lever. The machine began to rumble and putter before it let out a healthy whir. Noggenfogger let out a sigh of relief. The workers looked on in a bit of shock and surprise, while those who had helped out from the inside congratulated each other. Once the elixir wore off and they regained their size. Noggenfogger's bottom lip puckered out as he regarded the empty case of his famous elixir, then studied Gazlo warily. You're serious? You want to help? Not take over? Gazlo nodded. I knew you weren't dense. Though you may want to reconsider wearing white when making your rounds next time. Noggenfogger sagged a bit. Okay, I'll admit it. I could use the help, but you know how tough it is to change things. Could I pay my people more? Some, I guess. At that, a few workers within earshot gave him reproachful looks. Healthcare? I don't even know what that looks like, but we could find a place for a clinic or something. Maintenance, I get. But I don't have enough tinkers as it is, and the ones I got ain't worth a bucket of warm spit. A tinker behind him scowled, mumbling a profanity before stalking off. Gazlo shrugged. Or they're feeling misused and therefore not giving you their best. And maybe you don't remember what it is like, Mr. Horde Counselor, Noggenfogger said, but I got people around me, people who don't like profit margins, getting it eaten into. If I can't produce, they'll find someone who can. But can you help with that? Besides, if word gets out that I'm going soft, what happens then? Then you get an opportunity to show him what's what. Noggenfogger's nostrils flared. I'm serious, Gazlo. You know what I'm talking about. Other cartels, other trade princes are always just looking for a sign of weakness to pounce. And you know that they would see me doing all that, costing money and going in for the kill. Gazlo took that in. Okay, you may have a point there. Damn straight I do. What if Steamweedle had Bilgewater backing your play, taking a little heat off of you? The two biggest cartels working together? Then you'd be working from a position of strength. Noggenfogger weighed the offer, weighed his trust. In the meantime, Gazlo added, maybe you could put that big alchemy brain to work on the opposite of a poison. What, an antidote? Gazlo snorted. No, genius, cures for diseases, health potions, medicines. Oh, right. Well, I already got some things in the works. You weren't thinking for free, were you? Gazlo crossed his arms. Sure was, but I consider it more of an investment than a giveaway. Noggenfogger cursed under his breath. Lot of work, but yeah, fine. His eyes lit up. Plus, it's a whole new revenue stream. Let him call me soft then. He looked at Gazlo. You don't want commission on that, do you? Gazlo chuckled. I'll give you that one for free. Noggenfogger nodded, now grateful. I guess I, appreciate you coming down here, after all. Gazlo regarded Noggenfogger. Humility is a rare quality in a goblin, especially in a boss. Tells me you're not a lost cause. Noggenfogger squinted. I'm not sure whether you just complimented me or insulted me. Gazlo smacked his lips. So what about that drink, while you show me the real books? Noggenfogger winced. You saw through that one, eh? Gazlo sipped from his glass of Badlands bourbon in Noggenfogger's well-appointed office, which overlooked the mining operations like an eyrie. Noggenfogger had opened the ledgers, the real ones this time. He assured Gazlo that it was pretty much as Gazlo suspected. Grafting, insufficient reinvestment, and skimming from the workers. Standard operating procedure for goblin bigwigs for as long as Gallywix had held the reins. In fact, it wasn't just Noggenfogger taking a bite out of the profits, other bosses were as well, meaning it could be dangerous for Noggenfogger to rock the boat. If so, he could lose more than money by making it stop. I see room for improvement. You see how much I need to do? Noggenfogger leaned back in his armchair. Even if I play it totally straight, upgrading the machinery, putting all those safety regs in place, healthcare, paying folks more, I'm going to be in the red in no time. Rebuilding this place? It's going to cost a fortune. And it's not just my profits I'll be affected. Maybe things are different than in the Horde, but the other goblins, even trade princes, have others trying to get their cut. Then everyone who gets a cut will be looking to get things back to the old way. Gazlo sipped his drink. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and sip my drink as well. Like I said, I got a reputation as someone who gets things done where the Horde is concerned. Noggenfogger rapped his long nails on the wood desk. I thought you sold to both sides. At a certain point, I realized that while gold might spend the same, what happened with the things the gold bought didn't always feel right. Something changed in me after Garrosh was defeated, and I got summoned to repair the damage he left behind in Orgrimmar. You been? Noggenfogger shook his head. Gazlo continued. I was chief engineer there for a while, before I started up Ratchet for Steamweedle. Thrall himself asked me to survey the damage. You've met Thrall, right? Thrall the war chief? He's not war chief no more. Noggenfogger grimaced. I've seen him from a distance, once or twice. The guy's larger than life. Not that I'd ever tell him this, but I was still a little in awe. I've seen plenty of leaders who ruled by violence and fear, or by outmaneuvering their opponents and their friends. I've seen leaders who ruled through moral arm-twisting. But Thrall? He's different. He's decent. Noggenfogger cocked a skeptical, bushy eyebrow. I mean, not for nothing, but he named the city after his best friend. He named the entire continent after his dad. Gazel considered that. Okay, a fair point. But they had to name things something. Anyway, Thrall could have been war chief as long as he wanted. He could have ruled the Horde, or maybe the world. But he never seemed to want it. And he's so earnest. Noggenfogger gestured impatiently. So he brought you in and gave you the 5 copper tour. And the place was a mess. But between all that destruction, I noticed Thrall greeting people by name. Hundreds of people. Somehow he knew the names of folks so far beneath his station that they should have been invisible. The big guy just radiated compassion, empathy, whatever it was. I never encountered it from anyone before. And everywhere he went, these people who had had their homes, their lives, everything destroyed, they trusted him to help set it straight. That trust, it was something I didn't see enough of between our people. We finished the tour, the drag, the bank, the Valley of Strength, a Zeppelin tour, and he asked me how much it'll cost to rebuild it all. Better than it was. Gazel concluded, now I realize he's in a bind. And he came to me because, well, I'm the best. Plus, I've helped out before. He trusts me. You had him over a barrel. That's one way to look at it. Thing is, the way I want to do it, mixing materials, building stronger and whatnot, means more labor, more machines, higher shipping costs, and so on. And I gotta make a profit too. I got mouths to feed. So, I give Thrall my bid for the gig. You should have seen his face. Didn't go for it? He was set back on his heels, hard. But I explained what needed to be done, and he agreed to convince the Horde. Noggenfogger flashed his teeth. Heh, sucker. The point, Gazel rubbed his forehead frustrated, is he treated me as an expert, a master of my craft. I named the figure, and even though he was unhappy about it, he didn't haggle or argue me down. He showed me respect. The leader of the whole freaking Horde. I guess that's hard to come by. It's exceedingly rare, my friend, and hard-earned. But you and your crew at least gave him their money's worth. Gazel gazed at Noggenfogger, who now seemed even more receptive to the message he needed to convey than he had seemed earlier. I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone before, he said, leaning in. Noggenfogger leaned in as well. This is where big picture thinking comes in, Gazel explained. Since he showed me respect, he made me want to earn his respect. What I understood at that moment was that Thrall would do anything for his people, and I was going to do everything in my power to make sure that my people did the best work that we'd ever done. That's what he does. You get to know him, and he makes you want to live up to his standards. Unlike Gallywix. Well, like I said, Gallywix was a sociopath. He offered to do it cheaper, but no. Thrall came to me. So what did you do? Gazel made Noggenfogger wait for it. I dropped my price for him. Noggenfogger stared, then shook his head. Gazel chuckled. You should have seen his face then. Like it didn't compute that a goblin's first, last, and only thought wasn't just filthy lucre. You telling me you didn't make bank on that job? Oh, I made a profit. Just not as much as I could have. Point is, it made the war chief respect me more, and I assume he didn't keep it to himself. I'm hoping it was the first step to changing how everyone else in the Horde sees us, and maybe how we start looking at ourselves. He pointed down at the repaired shearing machine. That accident down there? There was an accident where we were rebuilding too. Folks from all the races of the Horde pitched in to help and get things back on track. Everyone and everything was taken care of. Seeing that changed how I looked at the world and what I wanted out of it. To be part of something bigger. That outdoing the guy next to me, Gazzo continued. My whole crew will tell you we were proud of the job we did. And we were even prouder that we did it for the Horde. He tipped his glass to Noggenfogger. Now, I want to share that with you. Noggenfogger frowned. You want me to be proud of being a goblin? I want all of us. Gazzo waved his hand to indicate all goblins in general. To be proud of being goblins. I want us to be proud of what we can build, and I want the Horde to be proud to be associated with us. I want us to start looking to the future. To stop treating each other as enemies and understand that not everything is transactional or a zero-sum game. He leaned back and put up his feet. What we did back there at the site, did you see how that mattered? Yes. No. I don't know. How? Gazzo gave a denial smile. Because nothing changes the atmosphere. Nothing gains your people's respect like a boss who wants to help and is willing to learn and compromise. It'll move mountains. Noggenfogger squinted at Gazlo. I just still can't figure out your angle. No angle, buddy. If we don't start helping each other, we're gonna tear each other apart until there's nothing left of us. Noggenfogger didn't argue now. He looked as introspective as he was ever going to look. At that, he raised his glass. To a new way. To a new way. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the Goblin Way. A nice little look into what's going on with the goblins, especially both Gazlo and Noggenfogger, as now two of the big-name goblins around, now that Gallywix has basically disappeared. Remember, we haven't seen Gallywix since the end of BFA, because he basically, once he realized Sylvanas was out of the picture and gone, he disappeared. He left. We still haven't killed him. And I'm expecting at some point Gallywix is going to come back, and we're finally going to get to have the opportunity to actually kill him. Even though he should have died at the end of the Goblin Starter Zone, and somehow he kept living. But we'll see. Maybe someday that will happen, maybe it won't, who knows. Maybe Gallywix will disappear, we'll never see him again. I don't know. But I will say this is a really nice insight into why Gazlo is still my favorite goblin. That he's not just a greedy goblin, he's actually a decent person that actually cares about his people. And it's such a stark contrast and opposite difference to other goblins, especially Gallywix. It's why by the end of BFA, I was so happy that Gallywix was gone, and Gazlo was now the one in charge of running the cartel. Because it's nice to have someone like him in charge, since he actually cares about his people and their well-being and actually treating them right. We had an entire quest line, actually, believe it or not, heading towards Mechagon with Gazlo, where we actually went with him, and he actually got to get some of his disgruntled workers to be happy workers for him again, because he wanted to give them the right kind of treatment that his workers deserved. He was showing them that he was a boss who actually cared about his people and his workers. It was a really great questline. I really liked that. I'm pretty sure I did that on camera if you actually ever want to see it. But, yeah. So, this one was not expected, at least to me. I didn't know they were going to be checking in on Gazlo during this time. I thought they were going to be focusing on characters that are heading into the expansion. Which, by the way, that new trailer, oof, chills. Especially at the end when Xalatath gives that smirk. Oof. I'll tell you what, our Naifu is back. By the way, if you also want to see a bit more about Xalatath, I have done videos not just on the questline to gain the Xalatath dagger, but also a video talking about her lore, as well as all the quotes that she has throughout Legion, if you want to check that out. So until then, I will see you guys next time.